Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Eric Green, superintendent here in Jackson Public Schools, and excited to have an opportunity to talk with some of our parents, some of our esteemed parents from JPS. Thank you so much to each of you for giving of your time to talk with me a little bit and to allow this conversation to be shared more publicly via Facebook Live. I want to start and just have us do a round of introductions so folks know who are here, who's here in the room, and we'll start here on my right.
Good evening. My name is Christina Payne Gaylord, and I am a mother of a 16-year-old, a 16-year-old. He just turned 16, and he's a rising 10th grader at Murrah High School. And I also have a 12-year-old who is a rising 7th grader at Northwest IB Middle School.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening. I am Andrea Crudup, and I have a rising 4th grader as well as a rising 2nd grader at Lester Elementary and also 8th grader at Bailey APAC.
Welcome.
Good evening. I am Jennifer Newell. I am the parent to a rising 9th grader at Murrah High School.
You? Yes, sir.
My name is Mark Davis Jr. I have a rising 7th grader, 2nd grader, and a 3rd grader. My sons at Powell, and my 2 girls are at Span Elementary.
Nice. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Marika Foreman. I have a graduating senior from Forest Hill this year, and I have a senior coming to Forest Hill this year, and a rising 9th grader at Forest Hill.
Awesome. And Mr. Gordon, who's a parent of a Bailey APAC and Murrah High School scholar, 2 scholars. He will be with us in just a few minutes. I'm going to ask everyone, if you would, just please bring the microphone closer to you as we're trying to talk through this, through the mass. I want to make sure that people can hear us. All right, let's dive in. So I've got some prepared questions, and most of the questions are some of the same questions that we included on our survey. And for those who have not completed the survey, if you would please go to our website, access the survey, and complete that for us. We'd really love to get your feedback. And I'm going to ask some of those same questions of our panelists here, and I'll start with just kind of surveying the room. Which of the following academic program options are you prepared to access? Are you prepared to access having your young people learn all day, every day, in person? How many of you? In person, all day, every day. Anybody?
Face-to-face.
Face-to-face, in person. Yes. 1. Hybrid model, which means that they would have some of their time spent in the classroom and some of their time spent at home learning virtually. How many of you would be open to that? So 3 of you would be open to virtual and at home, so a hybrid model. Would either of you be open to a completely virtual program where your scholars are learning only from home? Would you be open to completely virtual? Only 2 of you. Okay. And the others would not be open to a virtual. You would be open to it. So 3 of you, 4 of you.
I have a question. So with that virtual, like how long would that be for? Not just, I know as long as the pandemic is going virtual, but I'm sorry. I know as long as the pandemic is going virtual, so do we like have a time frame? Because virtual is no hands-on, is no, socialization. So that's why I'm not for virtual. I'm with the hybrid. So I was just trying to
Understood.
get a time frame.
Understood. You're grappling with the same things that I and other educators and other parents, we're all grappling with the same thing. So I don't have the answer for how long the virtual option would be in effect, but in the very least, we'd be talking about for the first semester, if not for the entire year, perhaps for the entire year. That's to be determined just based on how things evolve over time, what we know about the virus and the cases and all of those things. So it's still to be determined. All right, so again, I just want to make sure I'm absolutely clear of the parents who are here in the room, how many of you would be open. I'm not saying whether this is what you would ultimately do, but sitting here now, thinking about it now, how many of you would be open to having your scholar learn virtually only, which means they would be at home and learning virtually using our various programs. So 3 of you would be open to it. Okay, all right. Thank you. All right, let's talk about that a little bit. So if you're open to either virtual or a hybrid model, do you have the supervision available, or could you arrange for supervision for your young people at home to be supported in the learning? So either you or spouse or another trusted adult or grandma, someone who could support your young people while they're at home learning virtually. Do you have that, or could you arrange for that support?
Yes.
Yes.
Could, you could.
Yes.
Could, you
Yes.
could. All right. All right. How many of you have a device available for each of your scholars, if you have more than one, for each of your scholars to learn virtually, to do their virtual work, for each of them? Okay. And a device at all,
Yes, yes.
but just not one necessarily per child?
Correct.
Right. Well, the good thing is if we, not if, we are planning to move our district towards a one-to-one setting. So whether we're in person at the building, even a year out, right? Let alone in the fall. Wherever we are going forward, we're planning and building towards a situation where we have one device for each of our scholars. So in a minute, that won't even matter what you have at the house. You'll have them as a virtue of your child being enrolled in the district.
Great.
So we're excited about that, excited to move to that place. In addition to the device, though, we need to make sure that the connectivity is there. How many of you have reliable, stable connectivity in your home? Internet connectivity? Everyone.
May I speak on that real quick?
Sure, go ahead, please.
So, whereas prior to now,
Turn the mic up a little.
okay, whereas prior to now, these events, I would say now being since March,
Mhm.
all of that was fine and reliable. I did notice, we can just take specifically right now for this instance, my children are all enrolled in that summer enrichment program that we have. And it's nothing for, if we're on there Tuesday through Thursday, at least 2 of those days we're having connection and technical issues, and that is from teachers, all of the parents. I don't know if everybody's online right now, and it was the same in the school year in April specifically when everything was so heavy. So, well, that's that. It was,
Yeah.
that seemed to have been a problem, and is a problem now, but normally it will be fine.
Normally it's not. Okay,
Right.
that's helpful, and definitely something that we'll need to, especially as we think about adding more of our scholars
Right.
on devices and
Right.
onto a virtual kind of platform. We definitely want to make sure that we've got more bandwidth. I'll share with you that, welcome, Mr. Gordon, glad to have you here. We are working in partnership, we're already working in partnership with the city, and they're developing and expanding connectivity, broadband connectivity. And so they had already been doing that work, and now that we are in this situation where we need to rely upon reliable internet, we've been further developing on the system, and so looking towards some phases of increased connectivity over time, and eventually getting to the place where we actually have the fiber network run out to homes. So not even worried about the wireless system. This is way more technical than I'm trained to talk about, but I do understand that issue. And I, as someone who's now spending most of my life, most of my days on Zoom, Zoom meetings and things, I too have had more of those issues with connectivity.
Yes.
Ms. Gaylor, you were going to say something.
I was just going to comment on that. I believe that when you have multiple people in the same household online at the same time, then that can also complicate the network, and so that
Sure.
extended access would certainly be helpful.
I found that we had to stagger our time, which meant the kid that had the most problem would be on when the teacher is on, and those that I could help would be later on. So that helps as well.
Scheduling.
Yeah,
So-
scheduling the time.
Soon we'll be able to develop our own little how-to guide for parents who have youngsters learning virtually, just based on the experiences that, and not necessarily anything that we've done, but your own experiences as parents who are guiding your scholars in the process. Mr. Gordon, we had just started this first round of kind of check-ins, and so definitely want to hear from you with regard to 3 different options for programming that we're investigating and considering. The first being in-person, completely in-person, where face-to-face instruction is happening. The second, the hybrid model, where they're in person for some of the learning and at home, learning virtually for some of the time. And the third would be completely virtual. And so just wondering for each of those, starting with in-person or face-to-face instruction, would you be open to that for your scholars?
This is a very difficult choice, I think, for all of us. There's a big gap between what our public health.
Hold 1 second, let me make sure that your mic is on.
100%, needs to be at 100%. Which one is that? 3A.
Sorry about that.
Check, there we go. Well, as I was saying, I think it's a very, very difficult choice. I think there's a big gap between what our public health professionals think our situation is and what many of our policymakers are doing. And so, I don't feel particularly safe. I'll be very candid. I'm a hypertension patient. I enjoy good sleep because of a CPAP machine, and there's not very much evidence to support the notion that our young people wouldn't serve as vectors. So, my strongest preference would be for online learning, and that presents some very difficult challenges for us as a family.
Right. So I just want to make sure we're absolutely clear. Would you be open at all, just based on your understanding of the challenges, the risks, and just your own family dynamics? Would you be open to in-person at all?
Well, yes. I don't think I have a choice when it comes to I don't want my children to fall much farther behind. If we could do online classes at 1 in the morning, I think you'd find them up most of the time. So it's just a very difficult choice. I would be open to it. I don't know that there are any good alternatives to be able to meet the needs of our family.
So what I hear you saying is that it sounds like at least the virtual learning would be your top choice. So clearly you'd be open to that. Would you be open to a hybrid model where the scholars are in school part of the time and at home part of the time?
Yes, and that, yes, I would. Of course, as I said, that I'm reluctant to accept that. But to be quite honest with you, I trust you all as district leaders. I trust our city leaders in a way that I think we would get the best effort from you to ensure that the practices are followed.
Gotcha.
Best we can. And in my kids' schools in particular, I think they have great staffs, and I think those people would prioritize their care and wellness. And where there are gaps, I think we as parents and our kids will just have to communicate those.
Gotcha. Very helpful. We also checked in just about devices. Remind me, you have 2 scholars?
Yes, I have one at Bailey. and one going to Murrah.
And, and do you have devices at home for both?
No, we would have to get devices.
Or JPS would have to provide you with devices?
That would,
That's the plan anyway, so,
absolutely.
yeah, I appreciate that. And then the last thing I think that you walked in on was the connectivity and the strength and reliability of connectivity.
Yeah, as somebody I spent a great deal of time on Zoom, I've spent a good bit of time working with young people on Zoom in the last couple of months. In my home, Comcast may not do everything right, but I felt like we've had a pretty strong signal. They've been able to do whatever they've been doing on iPads as I've been working. So I don't feel that that's a particular challenge for me.
Okay.
And I recognize that as a blessing.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's helpful. So, so you've shared, and I appreciate you all being willing to share your own perspectives and your own kind of family dynamics and of your needs as families. Would love to hear, as you talk to your friends or talk to your children's parents or others in in the community or your networks, what are you hearing from others? Are they ready to send their children back? Are they absolutely not? Don't send them back? Or I'm looking for the hybrid, the mixed method. Would love to hear what you're hearing from others.
I've actually discussed this issue with other parents at the school. Being on the PTA board, I also got some input from the other members. Safety is obviously the number one issue. I believe that most of us can agree that being in class, as far as education goes, is the best option. But as far as safety, most parents that I speak with, they are very concerned about safety. Having 3 children myself, every year someone gets the flu. Every year someone gets something under normal circumstances.
Sure.
So that's why I'm so concerned about the safety of not just my children, but other children and the staff and the families. So I know how things can spread, and this right here is obviously a worse situation than normal. So my consensus from the parents and the PTA members that I've spoken with is just not safe enough for everyone to be in this situation, especially with JPS having a history of overcrowding in the classrooms.
So from what you're hearing from parents at your schools is that they're reluctant to send scholars back?
Yeah, that is the main issue.
Yeah.
The main issue. Also, I've gotten comments about after-school care and things of that nature. But safety and after-school care are pretty much the biggest thing, and safety goes with that after-school care.
Understood. What about others? What are you hearing? Are folks wanting, reluctant, wanting to send them back? Hybrid? What are you hearing?
I've spoken to a few people who are totally against it. They don't feel safe sending their
Totally
children to school.
against sending them back?
Sending them back to school. They're totally against it. Just worried about the cleanliness and the efforts being made to disinfect. And then others as well are worried about the social distancing. How are you going to implement that?
Mm-hmm. Understood. What are others hearing?
Well, same thing basically. The not wanting them to come all the way back, and are the policies going to be in place with the smaller children? Because the older kids, you can pretty much, they're gonna have them on some, but the smaller kids, it's not gonna be as productive as we would like for it to be. Mm-hmm. And my friend, she has all of her children are elementary age, and she said definite no. So.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
I think there is some anxiety as well as some apprehension about, starting back. We know that our children need to be in a school setting. We believe in education, and we know that education is important for their livelihood, but we're very anxious about what that's going to look.
Sure.
I think as parents, we're at a point where we're having to reimagine what education is going to look like going forward. It's not going to be the same. So I had a conversation with my sons earlier just to talk with them about it's not, when we go back, it's not going to be the same, guys. You know, there will be differences. There will be social distancing, the class sizes will be small, there's a chance that you may not have as much interaction with your peers. And so I think there is just some apprehension and then not knowing what to expect.
Sure.
That's one of the concerns. You know, we're almost, 2 months out, and we don't really have a definitive plan yet, and I know that that's part of this process. So people are anxious about that as it relates to those of us who work full-time. You know, we need to kind of know, you know, where are our kids going to be? Where are they going to be in a safe place where they can learn? Do we need to make alternative plans and arrangements? So my thought is that the sooner the district knows the plan, the best for us, for parents to
Sure.
also know the plan,
Sure.
so that we can begin to reimagine how life is going to look going forward for school.
Absolutely. You want to?
And it's nothing that everyone else hadn't said, just agreeing with everyone that I've spoken with so far has just resoundingly stated that they are not ready and they don't feel, you know, the security that they should feel in sending their children back to school. The sad part is, and I think most of us were saying that we're totally not just okay with, but we're able to have our children at home
Right.
and learning virtually, but many of our families and households and parents aren't able to do that.
Right.
And that's the sad part, because they're scared. They're sending their children. We'll be sending our children to school afraid. And not only that, but I have a few friends and family members who are just at a loss of what to do because of children with special needs and what to do with them. They can't really have them at home, so to speak, even though they have. But going to school, even simple thing that we find simple but not so simple is keeping the mask on will be a problem with someone dealing with autism and just other needs such as that. So that's a big concern, a huge concern.
I'll let you jump in there, and then I'll share just a little bit. So the goal of today, I should have said this at the top of the session. The goal of today's conversation is for me to hear from you, right? It was not to come with the plan, right? So you all understand that I'm saying that more for those who are listening in. The goal is not for me to share the plan with you, but to hear your concerns. What have you been thinking? What are you hearing from others, just as a representative group of parents? I can share a few things that we've been talking through and things that we're working through, just to kind of address some of the big questions that exist, but understanding that we do, much as you've already said, Mrs. Gaylord, we do want to make sure that as quickly as possible we get to you with a fleshed out plan that folks can kind of start to organize themselves around. But before I say more with that, I want to give you a chance.
I want to thank Ms. Andrea for raising that point. And I think as we imagine a hybrid situation and one that we can maximize for all of our scholars, it may not be, you know, I've had this conversation with several other parents. There are those families who are able to provide their children with the resources, the space to learn at home, and most importantly, the safety to do it. But we know that there are many young scholars who don't have that. The fact is, when they are at school, they are in the safest place for different reasons.
Various reasons.
Lots of societal reasons and economic and otherwise. So I think as you all think broadly about how you meet the needs of all of our scholars, for those who can be it may be necessary to not have grades all in the school at the same time, but those who can be at home, and those who need the support of the resources of the structure to be at school can be. And I think without regard to kind of economic status, you're going to have some people who can afford financially to have their kids at home, but can't be there with them.
Right.
And so the best place for those scholars is to be in school. So I think I want to encourage you to not have as your priority the need to kind of keep them on a table of growth. The most important thing we can have for them is that they be safe. We can catch up. Like I don't know that a lot of people realize it, but in a lot of systems, we're going to have to hit a national, if not an international reset button. So I just want to make sure, from my perspective as a parent, that you don't feel held to some kind of arbitrary need to meet a score or set up standards, but to meet the first priority, and that's the safety and well-being of our scholars.
I appreciate and receive that sincerely. Let me do a little station identification here. So a couple of things that I should share with you. One, hopefully you've seen in some of the latest communications that we launched a school reopening advisory committee made up of parent representatives, staff members, administrators, some of our central office folks who are doing some of the planning behind the scenes. We've got community leaders, organizations, community organizations represented. We've got health officials represented, and I'm probably missing some other bodies. And two of our scholars, I'm sorry, yes, most importantly, two of our scholars are on the committee. And so the charge of that committee is to help us to understand the needs of the community, as well as some of the resources in the community, and to help us to craft some, or to help to craft some strong recommendations for how we move forward. One of the first things we did, or the committee did, was to establish some non-negotiables. Like, of all the different pathways that we could take, or all of the options that we might create, what do we want to be true going forward? And one of the things, to kind of to the points I think that several of you have already made, is we've committed that there would be options for parents, right? That we wouldn't try to create one program that met everybody's needs, everybody's varying needs, because they range. There's such a wide range. And so including the students with specific and special needs, and English language learners, and our youngest scholars, and on and on and on, right? There's a range of needs. And so understanding that, we committed to creating options for parents that we could lift and deliver on with excellence and with quality and consistently, and not jump out there at the start of the year and figure out, oh, this is not something we can keep up with, and have to take it away as we get folks used to it. And so that's part of the work that we're doing, as well as, well, there's several other things. I won't get into all of the work there because I want to ask a few more questions. But so definitely the options, definitely looking specifically at the needs of students with special needs and our youngest scholars. I can't remember who, a couple of you I think talked through specifically our youngest scholars and the challenges of them keeping on masks, or not touching one another, not sharing materials, manipulatives, all that sort of thing that is just a part of, schools were created to facilitate social interaction.
Right.
That's the point, right? You don't create schools to socially distance young people. And so, this is kind of counterintuitive to schooling. Otherwise, you homeschool, right? Anyway, that being the case, we intentionally and very specifically have been looking through some models and recommendations of other places, of our federal government, our state government, other districts, looking pretty broadly at some of the guidance and some of the options and recommendations that folks are making, and things that people are thinking through. So just wanted to name that's part of the work as well. I will kind of end with, I think it was a point that you were making, Mr. Gordon, that I've been pressing the team hard on. I assumed that I didn't have to assume, I had actually heard from some parents that they were not ready to send their children back. I had already heard that. I haven't heard from many parents saying, I've got to go to work. It's just me and my baby. I need them to be in school. If they're not in school, then I have to create childcare for them, which is an added cost for me that I'm not prepared to. I haven't heard families say that, but I've been in education 28 years, and I'm clear that there are families living that reality. And so in our planning, I've been very clear with our team and with the advisory committee, we've got to create a situation that also addresses those parents, and without shaming them, right? They too care about their baby's safety. They also care that their baby has a roof over their heads and has food on the table, right? And so for all those who would say, oh, you're putting the economy above, later for that. And with all due respect, save it. There are folks living in the reality of my baby has to be someplace while I'm at work. And so let's have that conversation. So having said all that, just wanted to kind of level set that those conversations are happening. We're clear that there's no one size fits all. We've got to do some things that allow for the varying needs of our families and scholars. And quite frankly, the more parents who say, look, we have the wherewithal for our babies, our scholars, to learn at home. And because we're concerned about them going back to the school and learning face-to-face, and because we've got the wherewithal and can support it, we're making that choice to not send our children back. Reality is that actually helps the masses. That helps us to be able to distance children more. That helps us to be able to distance them on the bus. You know, in the classroom, walking in the hallway, all those things, the transitions, all those things that just matter and make it that much harder to keep them safe. So, you know, I'm not suggesting that that we have the plan. What I'm trying to share is that we've been thinking about it from various angles and trying to ensure that we've accounted for the needs that exist within the community. All right, speaking of buses.
One thing.
Yes.
One thing. Oh,
Please.
I just wanted to make it, just want to say thank you for bringing that up, because that's also another issue that was brought up to me by several parents at Span. I know there are several, we have a couple single parents on the PTA board. I'm well acquainted with several other single parents at the school, and I have an advantage working overnight, so I spend the daytime with my children. But I know some have 9-to-5 jobs, and they need a place to put their children while they are at work. So, you know, I'm glad you brought that up. You know, that was a concern that was on my list.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a far reach to understand that there are those needs. And just so, because we've had so much conversation and there's been so much work already and thinking on this already, I would be remiss if I didn't say, we've been in touch with several of the community organizations who are looking for ways to support even more than they have in the past, and looking for ways to support and backfill perhaps where we have hybrid or virtual options for scholars, and parents will need a space for those scholars to be safe and to continue their learning and that sort of thing. So that's a part of the planning that we're doing. As we think about what we as a school district can do with quality and consistently, where do we need to partner with organizations that have additional capacity to help us to meet the needs of our scholars and families? So just to name that those are there. All right, let me ask you a couple more questions. All right. Well, most of you were not really ready to send your children back for face-to-face instruction. Any thoughts on or comments on busing? Please.
I do have a concern. I am one of those parents whose child goes to one side of town for school, and I work all the way on the other side of town, and hours vary. So I'm concerned with the buses who run several routes a day. How are you going to ensure cleanliness and social distance? Can you speak to what actions will be taken?
No, ma'am. So I can share with you that that's a part of the planning, but I don't want to spend too much time on, because there's several things that we've been planning on. Know that that's been flagged, and there's a whole protocol that's being built up for cleaning buses. But at the end of the day, they're still on a bus
Right.
with other children.
Right.
And, you know, with a bus that could hold 50, call it 60, 50 to 60 scholars, in order to get the level of spacing, distancing that is typically recommended, you'd probably have 10 babies on that bus at best. So I
Understood.
so the point that you're making, the concern that you shared, it resonates. It resonates.
You know, Dr. Green, my middle daughter, who'll be going to Bailey, since her first day of school, she was excited about riding the bus. But since I was 10 years old, I've been uncomfortable with the fact that my buses didn't have seat belts. So it's really a stretch for me to think about the transportation element. I mean, I think I will say my wife is an educator, so that is a different level of concern for us. She will certainly, through the channels you all have created, speak for herself in that. But I think that, you know, to go back to the point you just raised, is kind of how we as parents can help create a more equitable situation for other families. The bus is one of those that I think if there's an opportunity to do some carpooling, just whatever we can do to kind of mitigate the risk of the bus, which, you know, we have good bus drivers who, I believe, by and large, you know, care deeply about our kids, and they want them to get home and get to school safely. But buses have always been one of the most lawless areas of the education system. So I think there is a risk there that we have to take very, very seriously.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Thank you for those reactions. I would love to have you talk a bit about facial coverings, masks, face shields, either of those, facial coverings. How do you feel about those? Should those be mandatory? Do you support the use of those in schools? You had your hand up. Go ahead, Ms. Foreman.
I support it, and I think it is very necessary. But with me supporting and some not taking it as serious as others, that's a concern that several parents have.
Sure.
Because I'm in education and healthcare, and we have to, before we go anywhere in the building, we have to have a mask on, whether we have gloves on or not. And it's because you're interacting with people. And there again, with the smaller children, that is going to be an issue. And another thing that I think we could do is stress upon the parents that if we are going to be hybrid, enforce wearing the face mask, because a lot of children are not wearing them out.
Right.
So if we start being proactive now, saying, hey, you need to wear your mask, we don't know what the school is going to do, then they may become comfortable or more comfortable with having them on for extended periods of time.
Good point. To start them now, conditioning for wearing them.
Because my children, before they go anywhere, they're gonna have to, because they drive, and I'll spot check to see, stopping at the store, because you have to let them know that this is very serious.
Right.
And some of society, they don't think it is as serious as it is. So we have to impress upon our own children, start conditioning them that this is what we're gonna have to do in order for us to go to school, in order for us to keep learning.
Certainly an uphill battle. I mean,
Yes.
you know, I can't imagine being, whatever, 13, 15, 18, feeling invincible, and I'm looking around in my community or wherever, and most people are not in masks,
Right.
or some large number of people are not in masks. How do y'all others feel about wearing facial coverings? I'm saying facial coverings because, you know, there are different types of masks, and there's also the bandana kind of coverings and that sort of thing that all really fall within the guidance from health officials that there's some kind of cloth covering to kind of catch any respiratory output.
Yes.
New language that I'm learning here. What do you think?
My thoughts are, I believe students should wear a facial covering. I think that when they're in the classroom setting and there are other students around, a facial mask would be appropriate because you're communicating and you have these, droplets that could potentially come out of your mouth. So I do believe that students should wear facial coverings. And I also realize that everyone may not have a facial covering.
Right.
So as a school district, I think that we will need to assist those students who may not have access to facial covering by providing those. And teachers and offices, I think that's going to be part of our school list going forward. When we begin shopping for notebooks and
That's right.
papers, masks will also be on that list because we want to make sure we have adequate coverage. That said, I have a son who is involved in sports. It's difficult to play basketball and wear a mask. It's virtually impossible because you have to be able to breathe. So I think that there are, it's necessary, but I know that there are instances when he will be in a classroom or in a school setting when he will not be able to wear a mask. So it's always a gray area.
Right.
It's difficult.
Go ahead.
Well, for the most part, I think we all can agree that masks, whether we like it or not, should be a mandatory thing. That's not really an option.
Right.
It's just we don't have a choice with it. That's as far as I've heard concerns about effects of wearing them all day, and I just really can't get around it. I have to wear them at work. I work in an environment where it gets hot, it gets cold, it gets steamy, and we have to wear masks, and sometimes it's difficult to breathe, so we have to stop, take breaks or whatever. But for the most part, we all understand that it's not really not an option right now.
It should be a non-negotiable.
A non-negotiable.
Yes.
Would you be surprised to hear that I've received emails and maybe calls as well? I don't know, some communications from parents and now it's a small number. It's a very small number, a handful, but from parents and from some educators saying that our scholars should not be in masks. Would you be surprised?
Because of the
At that.
seriousness, those are people who don't think it is as serious as
I'm
it
not
is.
surprised.
So I'm not surprised.
Not surprised,
I'm
not
not
surprised.
surprised, and that is what scares me.
Right.
about
I have to
sending
tell
my
you, I
children.
was.
That's the scary part.
Yes.
I was surprised. And actually took some time to outline why they believe, it's an unnecessary, well, I don't think they actually said unnecessary, but yeah, essentially it's unnecessary. It's undue stress. Children will have a struggle to keep them on. Now, I will say this, and then I want to get some other perspectives in. Now, we again, as we started to run through all the traps through all of these different strategies, there are some young people who have challenges with their breathing or with that or that, right? So we're not talking about those young people, because they're going to be few and far between, where there's an actual respiratory issue where wearing a mask is as much or more of a danger for me than not, right? So there are those. There are some young people who are hard of hearing, and either for them and probably even more so for others who are communicating with them, they need to be able to see the lips. So there's that. Or anyone who either has or can recall when their little one was learning to read and learning phonics, that TH sound can totally vex you, right? That can totally vex you. And so trying to teach a 4 or 5 or 6-year-old the TH sound with a mask on, where you have to actually show them how to position their tongue and their teeth and all that sort of thing. There are some all that to say, I was being a little dramatic with it, but There's some instructional needs and challenges that make wearing a mask all the time, bar none, next to impossible. Outside of that, I don't know. Others who want to get in there on the mask or facial covering?
So Dr. Green, I'm a country boy. I'm from the Delta. My great grandmother used to say, some people don't believe fat meat is
It's
greasy.
greasy.
So there will always be those.
Right.
And I think sometimes for somewhat reasonable causes. However, I think the mask situation illustrates one of the greatest opportunities you have. And I've not read much or heard many people talk about the opportunities we have. But we have this opportunity to kind of raise our young people in a new culture that centers public health.
Sure.
And school as a public good that we have to protect. So one of my challenges to you as our leader is to, with your team, think through intentionally how we start this new era of education with that education centered, with that public health education centered.
Yeah.
I remember the first, I was at Bailey. As a matter of fact, as a middle school student, the first person from the health department who came in to do any kind of sex ed conversation. And it was all biology and really gruesome pictures, but it left an impression upon me. And, I don't think we have to scare them into caring, but I think knowledge, our young scholars know what to do with knowledge when they get it.
Right.
So I think we need to seize the opportunity to kind of prioritize that, because I think it changes their disposition when it comes to correction or request for them to be more compliant with what we're trying to do for the good. But yeah, I think I'm 100% in on mask. I mean, I got on a blue one that clashes with everything I wear, but it works. I think it works.
Indeed, indeed. We've got oh shucks, only about 12 minutes left. Jeez, our time has flown. I want to open it up for kind of any additional thoughts that you have, because I'm sure likely you've been thinking about this whole reopening as much as we have as parents, kind of wondering and trying to prepare yourselves and your scholars for what comes next. I want to open it up just to see what other thoughts you have, cautions, concerns, any of that. I'm all yours. Want to hear what you're thinking. Anything additional?
I'll go ahead and start. So one of the things that, as I've been looking at some of the material, that there is a chance that students will stay in one place while educators come to them in the classroom setting. And that's something that I've read on various websites, and I know that those are possibilities. I believe that students learn from the social interaction, so I think that one of our challenges is how can we enable students to still be social,
Right.
while also social distancing.
Right.
And so I think that one of the challenges of our teachers and administrators and principals is to be able to not have students feel as if they're in a captive state in the classroom because they are unable to interact, but that we can create in management, we talk about esprit de corps, a sense of community in a social distance type of setup. And so that's going to be a challenge, I think, is the ability to make sure our students can grow from being able to interact in social distance and creating a sense of community. And I think in the long run, it will, if there's like a homeroom setting, students will take ownership of their homeroom and they'll value the cleanliness of that space and how they should act in that environment. And that's kind of my concern, is that
Appreciate
they're not
that.
in that type of set where they're just confined all day long. They're growing and they need to be able to stretch and get, interact with others.
Age. Absolutely. Very much concerned about, we typically will frame it as social and emotional needs, but absolutely agree with that. And I'd say That's an issue if we bring them back even in a hybrid model, as much or more an issue if they're learning virtually. And so something that we, again, another one of those things that we're planning intentionally around. How do we create some esprit de corps? How do we create community if we're virtual or mostly virtual or half of us are virtual? How do we do that and allow the young people to still build relationships and engage and feel a part of that group, that classroom, that whatever? Other thoughts? Yes, sir.
Oh, my thought on that, what you just mentioned about building community and socializing. One thing that I will say that the whole Zoom meetings with the teachers and things finishing out the semester from last year, my children enjoyed it. Yes, they did. Seeing their classmates, seeing their instructors, the principals, and other staff at the school, they enjoyed it. It got them excited. Now I'm speaking on younger children, a 7th grader now, a 2nd and a 3rd grader. It got them excited about getting engaged online virtually, and it was a good motivator. I think maybe we need more of that, and that would actually help, because obviously we can't run outside and go play freeze tag and hide and go seek like we used to. Definitely not now. But I think that's an option, and it helped out a lot with my children, because I've been at Span for 7, 8 years now as a parent, and I've gotten quite used to the staff. So when we get on, it gets very personal, because my children love it there. I enjoy the staff. Everyone knows everyone by name. The students, I get them. I've met some of the students online that I would see in the classroom, but I never really just spent a lot of time talking to. So there's an opportunity there to still get engaged socially. I think there's always an issue with scheduling and things like that, but I think that's still a big option, so we can do that. I just wanted to share that my children enjoyed it, and it was very beneficial.
Good. Glad to hear that.
And I would like to piggyback off of Mr. Davis, just saying the same when it came to ending the school year out this past spring, as well as I mentioned before, my children participating in the summer enrichment program, which they absolutely love, because even in the spring, that was quite different from what's going on now.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's somewhat of a test of how it will be if they were able to learn virtually in the fall. I mean, even this week with the program ending, they're having Spirit Week, so they were wearing their school T-shirts and having pajama day, and they're really, really enjoying it.
Nice.
Even my moody 8th grader, rising 8th grader, she's enjoying it and enjoyed ending the year. But another one of those things that I just wanted to mention was just a concern that I've been hearing from both family and friends, whether they were educators in the system or in the district, or just concerned parents, just thinking of the normal issues before now that we have in our schools. We have, various schools with various issues, whether it's, 2 bathroom stalls working,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Inability to wash hands, every school doesn't have, it's just so many issues.
Right.
And that does not help at all us feeling secure in, okay, well, if we couldn't handle that then, what makes them think that we can handle something like this now? And again, it boils down to just us feeling secure. At the end of the day, many of our parents, many of us will still have, whether we're feeling secure about sending our children or not, we'll have to send our children back to school. But it is so much better if we already know, hey, like Mr. Gordon said, that you all have our children's best interest at heart, nothing more, certainly nothing less, but, just that they have our children's best interest at heart. And that's a huge concern, that the little things have just gone negligent for so long. And now this is something much bigger and much more out of our control. And what will help ease our hearts right now?
It's real. I absolutely receive that. Yeah.
If I could just say one thing before, one other thing I was thinking of, I'm happy to hear that there's a chance that there will be a one-to-one technology. I'm going back to the technology piece. I think that's key that we have that technology access. But I also think that we need to have a learning management system that we can implement effectively and
Right.
have quality management methods in there. Consistency is
Right.
important because, you know, at the end of the year, we enjoyed the finishing off, but there were some inconsistencies in
Yes.
different instructors offered one format, another one offered Canvas, others offered Black, you know, just different formats of learning. So I think that if we do go to a hybrid or virtual setup, then we definitely need to have a consistent learning management system that is consistent across the board and that there are protocols for maintaining quality in that forum.
And we'll be sure to share more of the, I won't call them details, but more of the specifics around that sort of thing as we share out the plan, because you're absolutely right. We know that, and in talking with the team, you know, one of the things that we're fighting is just in general fears and concerns about children coming back and our readiness for that, but we're also fighting our reality and our past. Right? The issues with facilities and with, you know, restrooms and that sort of thing, right? As well as how we closed out the year. Now, granted, who would have thunk,
Right.
you know, we would have to shut the year down in the way that we did. But the reality is that was a lived experience for all of you. And so as we imagine who we want to be when we grow up in August, we know that we're fighting this most recent experience that we all had, not just you, that we had, caught unaware with this pandemic, as well as past challenges with getting facilities fixed or having the resources that we needed or having the staffing that we needed in place, all those things that are just true. And, you know, I'm certainly not one to run from the truth that we've lived through. So I appreciate that. Any final comments from anyone who think you'll have the final?
Final point of encouragement. I have, you know, I can't thank the other parents here enough for what they've brought. Just in, you know, even showing up a little late, what I've heard has really encouraged me, because it's the investment of not just our children and our care for our children, but just the expertise that people have brought to the room. I mean, I got to figure out what that Latin phrase you used a little while ago for building community was. I want to encourage you to leverage that as much as you possibly can, because it gives us an opportunity as parents to show more ownership and just kind of knowing of a few people here. If we don't have the time to do it, or that particular expertise, there are times when we know another parent who does.
Sure.
And the most important thing is that parents be at the table, because, you know, we have intelligence that would benefit the district and our scholars, teachers,
Sure.
Just as they have for us. And for years, we've needed to close that gap between how welcoming our schools were to parents, whether it was through the P16 councils or whatever. There's been a gap there.
Sure.
And this may present a new opportunity to close it more efficiently. So I encourage you to be bullish in doing that.
Thank you.
Just to extend on what you said, I think we should all buy into it. You know, when we start the school year as teachers or assistants, custodian and cafeteria staff, we meet, and the principal have a meeting, and we all have to buy into what the school year is going to be. So the way we start should be the way we finish. So if we start out now trying to work the kinks out and all of us buy into it, then I think that we will, it's gonna be rocky, but we'll get through it. Like the end of the year, I think it went well, collectively, it went okay because everybody had to like go from their bootstraps and just go at it.
Make it work.
That's why you had so many different resources, because teachers were truly trying to find things for each individual student, individualized instruction, where you may can get Canvas, I can't, I might can do Clever. So to me, collectively, I think as a whole, JPS did a great job. So, but moving forward, since we see those things, we all should buy into this upcoming school year, whether we go in face-to-face, hybrid, or virtually. I think parents, administrators, everyone, we should all try to buy into what the district is doing, even though it may not get everyone. Majority it will affect. So I think we should buy into it, whether we agree with some of the things or not, because everybody's not going to be pleased. I think we should just leave here trying to buy into what the district is trying to provide for us as a whole.
Appreciate that. Is that back to you? Did you give your final? Did you have a final
I would just
thought?
like to mention one thing, just to congratulate the district on keeping the parents and the community informed. I think it makes us feel a lot better when we know that our concerns are being heard and that plans are coming forth. And I just want to encourage you to keep that line of communication open.
Thank you. In my head, I do so much more of this than it actually happens. So I appreciate that, and I hear that as a push to do more and more. So PSA, I'm supposed to remind everyone, please, 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 if you have not, please go to the JPS website to access the parent or the staff member surveys. We really, really, really need that, that information from you. This has been very helpful for me to get deeper kind of what's behind some of your insights and your experiences and what you're concerned about. But we actually really, really need to hear from a broad swath of our parents and families from across the district. That'll really help us to fortify our planning and make sure that we're responding to the needs that are out there. So that as well, tomorrow at 10 a.m., we will be back here again with a group of our staff members. And so if you're able to break into your Zoom schedule to watch us or listen in on the conversation with staff members and see where there's some aligned feelings to what we heard here, and maybe perhaps some different perspectives for what we should do coming back in the fall. Definitely want to have that. And I need a reminder for our scholars, that's Monday. It's Monday at 2:30. Monday at 2:30, we will hear from our scholars. So I'll have a group of them giving me some feedback, and I'm anxious to hear from them as well, to see if we've all got it wrong. And they have totally different perspectives on what should happen. So please do hang in there with us. Give us your feedback. Know that we're working super hard to get something that is of quality in terms of a plan, but also something that is realistic, something that we can do consistently and with quality. And we've committed to no later than July 17th to have an actual printed, well, not printed, but an actual finalized plan available for you, as well as likely before then some of the big rocks. Hey, we will be offering virtual and hybrid program, more details to come, but we've committed to doing that. All right, we're gonna wrap up. Thank you so much for your time today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate and how much this has been helpful for me as I think through where we are and where we go next. We'll get there. We absolutely will. I have no doubt that we will get there, and we'll have a plan that honors the needs of our community, our families and scholars, but also that ensures that folks are safe and learning, because that's kind of important. All right, y'all be good. Be safe.